Love in Abundance, Part 2. We all looked at each other after Cyril's revelation. I had not expected that. What would it mean for the three of us? So, I did what I normally did when I was faced with a situation I did not know how to handle. Deflected. Can we talk about this later? We need to get to Garrett's home. I did not know what to say, okay? It was such an unfamiliar concept for me. I'd been exposed to monogamy for most of my life, never being faced with having two people vying for my heart. They both nodded, and we helped Gareth to the car. When we got to his place, we took turns fussing over him, even though he insisted he was okay. I was not careful. Calm down, both of you, he insisted. Do you need any pain medication? I can run over to my apartment and get some, Cyril offered. While you do that, let me make some warm soup for him, I agreed. First of all, Marlin, you are a terrible cook, and Cyril, no need to go over to your apartment. There are some pills in that drawer over there, he said in a very authoritative voice, which finally set us right. We were all so used to caring for each other that we would even visit each other in the middle of the night if one of us was not okay. There was a genuine chemistry and understanding between the three of us. But how would we navigate this confusion? Only time would tell. That night, we both refused to go home, so we slept on neither side of him. No one said anything about the obvious feelings between us. We just stayed in the moment with each other, one of us on either side of Gareth. The next morning, Gareth was feeling better and could finally walk on his own. They made breakfast while I tidied up the bedroom. Gareth was a hoarder. He had so many collectibles and whatnots in his room, and so the upkeep of his room was difficult for him. Luckily, he had me. We ate breakfast, but in an awkward manner, as each of us kept on exchanging glances. That was until Gareth decided that it was enough. Are we really going to avoid yesterday's topic? Sorry, I reacted that way. It's okay if you two want to date, Cyril blushed a bit. The thing is, I also like you, and I like Gareth as well, I confessed. But I don't know how to feel about the whole situation. Obviously, I have a history with Marlin, but with Cyril, I think he's cute, but I have not developed those sorts of feelings. I'm also not sure how to feel about Marlin. I am sorry. I do not know if this makes the situation better or worse, Gareth confessed. No, I understand. Either way, I care for you and Marlin. Let us just be friends then, I suggested. Sure, they both agreed. I wish I could say that things went back to normal, but that was not the case. We did not drift apart. We grew closer. There was some flirting and moments of incredible tension between us. There came a time when Cyril told us that he had a date, which I was jealous of. What I did not expect was for Gareth to care so much. He was pacing for most of the time until Cyril came back from the date. I had thought of the concept of polyamory several times, but both of the guys were monogamous, and there was Gareth who was unsure of his feelings. At least that's what I had understood from him. When Cyril came back and said he did not get along with the guy, I caught a little smirk on Gareth's face. Then, one evening, there was a loud knock on my door. I wondered who was disturbing my me time. I was deeply engrossed in a novel and did not want anyone disturbing me. Gareth was working till late, and Cyril said he was busy with something. When I opened the door, I was buried under a mass of confetti, and two of my favorite people singing happy birthday to me. And there I was, thinking that I had gotten away with hiding that it was my birthday. I had not celebrated my birthday in years. I just treated it like a normal day. That way there would be no expectations. I glanced at the guilty person who had ratted me out, Gareth. He gave me an innocent look and shrugged. They let themselves in despite the death glare I gave him and continued singing happy birthday. Guys, you did not have to, I sighed. We wanted to. Now, have some cake. You have no idea how difficult it was for me to get it at the last minute. Cyril said in a no-nonsense voice. Fine then. Thank you both. I do not deserve you. Hug? I opened my arms and they were both enfolded in my arms. I felt true happiness. Our relationship was symbiotic, and not one that came along quite often. Even if I could not be in a relationship with either of them, at least I was happy. They cut the cake and we had some while chilling on the sofa. The cake tasted a bit weird, but in an enjoyable way. They both exchanged a look when I took a little bite. Those two were up to something. My pranksters. Okay, spill it out, I said. Have you ever had edibles? Gareth laughed. I looked at both of them, in turn. Of course they would do this. I shrugged and had a bit more. Both of their mouths dropped when I started eating more of the cake. I laughed and said that I had a brief stint with them during my college years. I'm impressed. You are a bad boy? Cyril smirked, as he took a bit of cake that was about to reach my mouth and popped it in his mouth. I could not help but looking at his perfect lips. He looked between both of us and smirked. We had a bit more of the cake, and as time went on, we started to feel the effects of it. And let us just say, our bodies seemed to have gotten minds of their own. We had moved to my room, where we were lying on my bed and talking about random stuff and laughing. It was the most fun I'd had in ages. I reached for some more of the cake, but Cyril took it before I could. I dived for him, and we ended up with a piece of cake between our mouths. Then we sort of kissed while eating the cake. I want some cake too, Garrett smirked. I took some and did what I had just done with Cyril, and it was so enjoyable. The sensations going through my body were unlike anything. Gareth pulled Cyril closer to him and started kissing him, and I loved watching them. Our bodies became tangled in kisses and touches that we amplified by the edibles. It was like we were in sync, enjoying each other with no jealousy. Eventually, we curled up on my bed and fell asleep together. I could not help wishing that this was to be a regular thing. They both completed me in ways that I had never felt before, and I had seen the way they looked at each other, then at me. There was something there that was bigger than anyone else could understand. When we all woke up the next morning, we did not have that much energy. We had fallen asleep late in the night after all, but there was still chemistry from the previous night. We kissed each other again in the morning. I decided to bring forth the idea that had been floating in my mind for the past few days. I want both of you. I cannot choose, and I think you want that too, I said. Someone has gotten good at expressing their feelings, Garrett said. They both chuckled at me, but I knew it was just innocent teasing. While I was the introvert, Cyril was the ambivert, and Gareth was the extrovert. We were perfectly balanced. Yes, you're right. I was not sure in the beginning, but the both of you have me wrapped around your little fingers, Gareth confessed. I knew it when you got jealous of Cyril's date. He was? Snitch, they said at the same time. I could not help laughing at how cute they were. I cannot say anything else. Gareth will make sure I'll disappear. I will protect you, Marlin. I want to know more about Gareth's jealousy. You both are insufferable. So how are we going to do this, Gareth asked. A little thing called polyamory, my dear, Cyril smiled, winking at me. None of us had ever been in a polyamorous relationship before. I did not even know if gay poly relationships existed, but our chemistry was too much for us to remain friends. And so we began the long, fun, but bumpy road of polyamory. We still continued to hang out, but we would go on dates more often. Sometimes the three of us and sometimes two at a time. I got to have individual relationships and understandings with each of them, independent of each other during the time that we were together. We each had different interests, so some things were Cyril and Gareth things, or Gareth and Marlin things, etc. And then there were things that we did together, where I was not as affectionate. They made up for it with their cute silliness and pranks. Cyril was the more emotional and soft-hearted one, so it was always our instinct to protect him. There was a few fights and misunderstandings, but they only brought us closer. Eventually, we were very public with our relationship, with mixed reactions. Whenever there was an event, I would always bring both of them. And when asked, I would proudly say that they were my boyfriends. To our face, no one has said anything. They just gave us strange looks and moved on. But online, it was different. There were always going to be people who had a problem with us and called us sinners. Firstly for being gay, and secondly for being in a throuple. We did not care. When we got questions on whether our love was less because it had to be shared, the answer was always no, it was more. I could never say who I loved the most, because there was not one that I favored more than the other. I loved them both in different ways. I would always be enough. After we had been officially dating for a few weeks, we had our first night together. I did not show it, but I was very nervous. It was going to be my first time with Garrett, after so many years, and my first time altogether with Cyril. It was a bit awkward in the beginning, but we were so used to each other that we laughed it off. It was clear that we were all nervous. Love you both, I said, bringing them in for an embrace. It felt like my heart was going to burst from all the happiness that they gave me. For once, I did not feel alone. They were my family, and they took care of my needs. Without having to ask, we knew when one of us needed to be cared for, and we would do our best to support him, each in our different ways. That night, things eventually eased up, and it was like we were the only people in the world. Being intimate with the two people I loved was so intense that afterward my body was buzzing. It was like I was on a whole other planet altogether. Afterward, we lay quietly. There was no need to speak. but we had said everything in those moments. I might not have had luck in love in the past, but now I had double the luck, and I was content. There came a time when we had to let our families know, as we were not living in the same city as them. For me, it was a no-go area, and they both knew that, so it was Gareth and Cyril's family that we had to tell. Gareth's dad could not care less, and I could see how sad he was that his dad cared more for his new family than he did for him. But Cyril's mom was an angel. When we went to visit her, and he told her who we were to him, she said that she was glad he had found true love. His father was no more, so all we had was his mother, a tiny woman with a heart of gold. We had dinner with him and his sisters, who wanted to know every single detail of how we got together. Cyril found it annoying, but Gareth and I recited the story of how we met to them. It's like a fairy tale, Ina said. Yes, I hope to find love like that one day, Georgia beamed. They entertained us with stories from school, and by the end of the night, they felt like I'd gained a new family. After our visit, we were always invited over, and Cyril would get a scolding if we went too long without visiting. He would always say that it was a bit embarrassed by how enthusiastic she was towards us, but I could tell that she was happy that we were accepted. All was not perfect, though. The demons from my past made one last stop, nearly wrecking everything that I had amassed for myself in the past years. I got a message from my mother one day letting me know that my father had passed away. My father had been my only family member who had supported me, but he could not do much when I was kicked out. My boyfriends noticed immediately that I was not okay, and I went into a state of shock. I was going to have to go home after so many years. I was surprised that she had even informed me of his death. In true fashion, Gareth and Cyril will not let me go alone. But it's okay, I will survive. It's been many years. I'm not scared of them, I insisted, trying to get my voice to stop shaking. I did not lose my composure often, but I had been crying for most of the day. All I could do was snuggle deeper into Cyril while Gareth was caressing my hair. Cannot let you go alone. Are you forgetting that I was there so many years ago? Your father was a good man. He fought to support you during your last few months in high school, in spite of your mother's wishes. Gareth reminded me. They were right. I could not go to his funeral alone. I would go earlier, then they would follow me in a few days' time. I had many fond memories of that town, but some dark ones as well. I stayed in my hotel room and I only went to the house when I was needed. I was the oldest son, so most of the responsibilities were on me. All the confidence that had gathered dissipated in front of the viper that was my mother. She did not hesitate to make remarks about me and my life, and how it was a disappointment, but she had to honor my father's last wishes and have me attend. I bit my tongue and cried later at night. What had I done to make her hate me so much? I felt worthless once again. On the day of his funeral, my boyfriends arrived early in the morning, and I felt stronger. When I spoke about him, I did not look at my mother, who was glaring at me as if I was dirt. I focused on the love in their eyes. I was used to displaying affection for them, so I did not really think about who was watching when I was with them until my mother came to me and asked me to tell my boyfriends to leave. Apparently, I was making a mockery of the family name. She could have poked fun at me, but when it came to my loves, I would cross an ocean of fire for them. Why don't you leave? Everyone knows you were barely married to him. He wanted to leave, but you would not let him. You abused him, then me. Yet you have this audacity to stand here and tell me who I can and cannot have at my father's funeral? You're a shameful little... Shut up. I love them both. You do not want to start anything right now, I growled. Her eyes widened as I have never spoken to her in that manner. She left. I felt 2 hands squeeze my shoulder and the knot that was in my stomach loosen up. I was invited to the reading of the will, despite my mother's wishes. My father had one last trick up his sleeve. It appeared. He left the fun for me and my siblings. My mother only got the house, and she was furious. On a whim, I asked my boyfriends how they would feel about a trip out of the country, around holiday time. It was difficult to stop the smile from my face when they jumped up and down on my bed. Hey, I've just made that bed, I laughed. We love you, they shouted, dragging me onto the bed with them and making me jump up and down. I tried to let them know that they would owe me a new bed if mine broke, but I could not help laughing with the giddiness. We were not perfect. We often fought, got jealous, and faced difficulties with being accepted. But our love was pure. It was not diluted, but in abundance. Love can come in any form. It's up to you whether you accept it or not. The end. Thanks for watching. Consider subscribing to become part of our Rainbow Force, and stay wholesome.